Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on today's subject of working with keywords and metadata, a much requested subject. So that's what we'll be looking at today. Before we get to that, if this is your first time with us, you're listening to David. I'm part of the software sales team based out of Copenhagen in Denmark. And as usual, we have a 60-minute session today. We probably won't need all of that for keywords. It's a pretty simple concept, so we can get through it probably a bit faster than we normally would. You're very welcome and encouraged to ask questions throughout. So at the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see the last section is called questions. You can put a question in there and that will come straight through to me. Equally, if you're on your Android device or iOS device, you'll see a question mark icon on the bottom of the screen, and you can tap that and ask a question in a similar way. I am recording the session too, so don't worry if you can't remember every single detail. You can always watch it again, and indeed all the other webinars at a later date. So look out tomorrow for a follow-up email and you'll be able to see all that good stuff in there. Okay, let us begin. So I need to just come out of Keynote and you should be able to see Capture One on screen. As usual, I have forgotten to start my mouse locator, so let's bring that up. This will just help you to see the mouse zooming around the screen from time to time as well. And we need a visible questions panel. And we are good to go. So today, as the title would suggest, is all about keywords and metadata. So how to add keywords to one or more images, how to manage those keywords once they're on those images, copy and applying metadata across from various images, and really the key to all that is managing a keyword library. So that's really the most efficient, best way to do it to actually get on with the task of keywording. Quite often with this task, we all have good intentions that I will promise to be a good keyworder, and it never happens. But hopefully by the end of today, I'll give you a couple of things that you can, or resources that you can refer to, so you know exactly how to do a good job of your keywording. So what we do is we go through adding and removing keywords to one image, adding and removing keywords to a whole bunch of images. And then we'll look at the keyword library, how to manage that, and then finally finish off with metadata. So let's just highlight one image first of all, keep it simple. We'll make these a bit bigger, why not? And today we're going to stay pretty much in the third to last tab, which you'll find in the default workspace, which is the metadata tab, which contains the keywords tool, keyword library tool, which we'll come back to, and the metadata tool. So first of all, how do I add keywords to an image? Well, pretty simple. So let's choose an image and then say something to describe that image. So this was in Utah, I would imagine. So for example, I could type Utah, hit enter, and then that keyword is shown as like an oval disc and is now added to this image. If I want to add more keywords, I can just do so. So I could say desert, for example, USA, plants, and so on. Don't worry, my keywords will get much more sophisticated and better than this. So those particular keywords are added to that image. You'll see if I deviate to another image, they disappear because I only added it to the single one. If I want to remove a keyword, then I can simply hover next to it, as you can see, and tap the X that shows up to delete that keyword. Simple. Good question from Richard. Are keywords, oh wow, almost at identical times. Jonathan and Richard asked exactly the same question and wrote it in exactly the same way. You must be sat next to each other. Are keywords case sensitive? Yes, they are, which is why, hold that thought, when we come to talk about the keyword library, that's a really important consideration. If we want to get rid of all keywords on an image or images, we could just hit the reset button here and that will get rid of everything like so. So add, remove, reset, pretty simple concepts to get hold of. Now if we want to add keywords to more than one image, you can probably guess you need to select all your images. You have to make sure this is turned on, which by default it is, and that's the edit all selected variants toggle. It's also in the menu here, edit all selected variants. It's good knowing what this does, and you'll find that if you try and process a batch of images and only the first one gets processed, or you try and delete a whole bunch of images and only the first one does, and so on, it probably means that you've got this turned off. So worth knowing what this curious little toggle does at the top. So let's add keywords to a bunch of images. You can probably guess how this works. If I type in Utah and hit enter, then now my keywords are applied to those top 3 images. Yes, Ted, if you want to add multiple keywords at once, then you can do that in the menu here as well. So then I could say USA, comma separate, which I know is hard for you to see, desert once more, comma separate, landscape, for example, and so on. And now I press enter, and then it adds those keywords in, which is of course much more efficient. Now, right now we've got these 3 images which have these keywords as such. Now what about if I expand my selection out to the bottom row as well? So notice when I did that, you can see, I know appreciate might be hard to see, but to the left of the keyword there's a little minus notification. So what that simply means that within my selection, some of the images don't have these keywords. So if I want to simply add this keyword to everything in the selection, I can click the minus like so. So if I want to add landscape to everything in that selection, then I can do so. So now if we just go to this one, you see it has landscape and desert like so. Carl says, if you hit the reset button at the top, does it erase all the keywords? Oh, the reset one here? Good question. Let's try it. No, because it's only the adjustments as such. So it only resets adjustments. It doesn't get rid of the keywords, which I think is probably the behavior you would want to expect as well. Finishing sort of adding keywords here. If you want to get into parent and child keywords, and I would strongly suggest you hold this thought until we get to the keyword library, then you can also do that by entering in here. So for example, if I wanted to write USA / Utah, UT for Utah, then that would add a parent and a child as such. So now if I hover over Utah, it shows me the relationship between USA is the parent and UT, like so, is the child. But again, wait till we get to keyword library because we can manage that in a much better way. One last little thing to mention. Let's just go to this one, for example. It doesn't matter which one we use. By default, the keywords will show in the order that you added them. If you want to, we can actually drag and drop and reorder them like so. They will actually then, when you come to export, be ordered in a different way in the metadata of the image itself. For some people, I don't know why, but for some people that's important. So if we just export these 2 out, for example, let's just do a quick export process. Let's just choose this folder, catalog exports. Let's just delete any old crap that's in there. So let's process out these 2 images which I've just drag and drop to reorder. So let's process them out. Should happen pretty quick. So we've got 2 images here. Let's open them up just in preview. Photoshop doesn't matter, whatever we use, but let's just use preview as that's quick. So if we look at this image and then where's our IPTC data gone? Keywords, no keywords. Oh, I know why. Did I turn it off? Yes. That was for that's. I turned that off because that was for a later part of the webinar, which we did this morning. So let's delete that and process them out again. That would make much more sense, wouldn't it? And get rid of that. Okay, let's process those two again. That was a sneak peek at the future. You can, of course, strip all your keywords out if you wish. So there's my two images. Let's open those back with preview. So if we flick between these two, so you see the order of keywords changes. Even though it's exactly the same keywords, they're ordered in a different way with drag and drop. Philip says keywords in order is important if there's identifiable people in the image. That's a really great use. So if you've used keywords for people, then you could actually order the keywords as the people appear left to right. So thanks, Philip. That's a good tip. I learned something today as well. Okay, so we've seen how to add, remove and reset keywords either on a single image or on a batch of image. All pretty simple stuff. I should add, if you select a bunch of images, the reason why we have this A to Z icon here is that it will show you the keywords in alphabetical order, because obviously we can't show different sort views for different images as such. Okay, now really the crucial part of all of this is the keyword library. So if you want to start keywording your images and doing a good job, then it really makes sense to start with a good keyword library, because this goes back to what Jonathan asked and Richard asked, which is, are keywords case sensitive? Which, yes, they are. So you don't want to be in the situation where we have landscape with a lowercase l and landscape with an uppercase L, because it's essentially the same keyword, but it's identified in the database as two different keywords, which is what we don't want at all. So I'm just going to select these first two rows and just reset, so we get rid of all our keywords like so. So we've got no keywords left in any of these images, as you can see. And now we want to introduce the keyword library. So the keyword library really is going to be your master database of all your keywords. And you can, if you've got lots of time, you can make this yourself. It's very simple. We just say create keyword library, new, give this a name, David's library. And then I can then simply go ahead and then start adding keywords to my library. But you can imagine that that's potentially a lot of keywords, and there must be a way to make this process faster, which there certainly is. So I'm going to get rid of that. And this is not exclusively just this option, but this is an option I found for a free keyword list. There's ones that you can pay for, of course. This one is designed for Lightroom, but it works just as nicely in Capture One. And it's completely free, but I should definitely give recognition to the author for doing this. So what I'm going to do is copy this web address, and I'm going to put this in the chat window so everyone can grab it at a later date if you want. But there's essentially one master keyword list, and there's some additional downloads for other things as well. And I've seen the author has kind of added new lists as they go. So this is a huge head start into getting a good keyword list. And I've found this basic list has fulfilled pretty much most of my needs. But of course, when there's a missing part, it's then easy to add that into the list. So once you've downloaded this, I'll show you what it looks like. It's just a really basic text file. So under here, we've got some keyword list like so. All it is a very simple text list. And we have our child, parent, grandparent shown like so. And all they are is tabbed out. So if you wanted to add another keyword term, you could just edit your foundation list, for example. You could just simply add that and then import that. Or before you import this into Capture One, which you'll see in a minute, then you could fully edit this if you want. It's worth having a look at the author's website and have a look at their FAQ, because it explains a little bit about the thought process behind the categories of the various different grandparent, parent and child keywords, and the thought process behind that. And certainly with this section is worth reading, like the tilde symbol, and you'll see how this is laid out in a minute when we import it into Capture One. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to say, let's make up in the top of the keywords library tool, let's create a keyword library from a keyword text file. So we do that, and then we find our keyword list right here. Let's keep the name the same so we can recognize our author nicely should he ever end up watching this, and say create, and straight away we have our keyword list populated like so. Now the reason why this particular author puts the tilde at the titles is so that if you have an application like Capture One which types ahead, if I type photography like so, then it doesn't apply the parent, it applies the child, which then in turn applies the parent and then the grandparent. So that's just to prevent just the parent being added, which is quite a nifty, simple way of doing it basically. So the way this keyword library is laid out is an attribute as such, so various different attributes to the image itself. Photography, that's various things like orientation, type of photograph, treatment and so on. Then it's what is it, various different subcategories there. Where is it, which is empty, we'll come back to that, and who is it. So you can add your own clients and people like Philip was suggesting earlier. Richard was asking, with the parent and child, can you just enter the child's name, or will you need to enter the parent child? Well, you'll see that in a minute, Richard, hopefully. So now what happens, now that we've got our keyword library here, if we do the same thing again, now if I type in desert, we've now got these type of head options. So desert, land, what? So I'm going to do tap, and that now enters all my keywords with one tap like that, which is much better. So rather than now just giving this a very simple characteristic of desert, I've also now got the better categories of, well, it's land and it's what, it's a thing as well. I can still apply these to a batch, so if I select all of those, I could just tap the minus again to add all of that, for example. And if I wanted to add some more keywords, of course, then I could go in and what else could we say? We did desert already, so I could type landscape, whoops, excuse me, landscape, orientation, landscape photography. So we've got two different things there, tap, so that now adds that. We could add some sky, so that's an attribute, like so. Very simple, really easy to do much better keyword now that we're pulling from a much better and broader database as such. Now as it comes to where it is it, if I type in Utah, then I don't have anything, because remember that part was empty. So if I want to add anything here, I can either edit the text file, for example, and then re-import that, or I can just edit directly in Capture One. So if we go to where, we've got country here. So what I'm going to do is right click next to where and say create keyword child, and then we're going to say USA, like so. And if we I want that under where, so let's just drag that up like so, and then I'm going to right click next to USA and say create keyword child and call that UT for Utah, like so. So now I've got where, USA, Utah, like so. So if I start typing UT like so, then I can get my keywords going quite nicely like that. Simple. Anne says, if you don't want to add parent keywords, just the child, is it possible? No, it's not. And the reason for that, well, when we designed the whole keyword tool, we went back and forth between should we add all of them or should we not add all of them. Consulting various documents and standards and so on, it was decided that the right thing to do was add all the parents as well. I mean, there's no disadvantage to doing that, it just actually gives you better search capabilities at the end of the day, which we'll look at as well. Before we finish, let's just add, I just want to add a couple of other things. So this is sunny. So for example, weather, sunny like so. I want to add cloudy. This is just to show something for searching later on. Cloud weather like so. And do we have anything with rain? Yes, we do. So let's type rain here like so. That's just stuff for the future that I just want to show you when we come to searching. Now you've seen me just add keywords by type ahead. I think that's the fastest way to do it. Equally, let's just make that a bit smaller. You can actually expand out, you can choose an image and then you can expand out your keywords and you can go hunting for them. So I can say what, let's think land, and you know, it's really slow, whereas I look at that and I think, well, that's a road. So is this in my library? Road, yes it is, like so. So that's much faster to think and type ahead than try and dig through your list and find it. You can search in the list. So if I say road here, then it will show me the various different options and filter down that keyword list. What is the effect of the pipe separator between words? So if you use the pipe, it's the same as using greater than or less than. I think it will give you a child as such as well. This will definitely give you a child, but I think the pipe also gives you a child. The benefit of using this way is that you can enter child then parent, or you can enter parent then child, going that way as such. If you want to delete any keywords, for example, if we wanted to get rid of country here, for example, I could right click next to it and say delete selected keywords, like so, delete, and then that takes that away, so that cleans that up basically. So right click next to the keyword, you can delete it. You can also rename it. So if you do spell something wrong, then you can rename it here and then it will it rename in the rest of the database? Good question. Well, shall we test that? Let's see. Let's go to here and let's rename. Instead of UT, I'm going to say Utah, like that. So does it rename here? No, it doesn't rename post, because once it's applied to that image as such. Okay, just checking the notes. Oh, the other thing I should mention is that right now you can see we've got two keyword libraries. This library here, catalog keywords, this shows me every single keyword that is currently in this Capture One catalog as such. So these keywords are unique to this catalog. This library is global to anything I open in Capture One. So if I was to quickly open something totally different at random, then we'll see that we've got a foundation list, so the same list that we've been working on, and we've got our additions here, but my session keywords is empty because this particular set of images doesn't contain any keywords. Okay, let's close that down. Ryan says, can you merge two keywords, like if you have images with capital landscape and lowercase landscape, can you merge them together? No, you can't merge them, but what I would do, I would filter all images with capital L landscape, add, depending which one you want to keep, then add lowercase landscape, and then just simply delete all the uppercase landscapes, which you could do quite easily, I would think. So that would probably be the way to do it. Richard says, if renaming keyword for misspelling, couldn't you fix previous uses by searching for that bad keyword and editing? Yes, correct. So delete bad, add correct. Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to explain to Ryan, but that's correct. So filter for the bad spelling, add the good one, and then delete the bad one as such. Okie dokie. The other thing is that you can also have more than one keyword library, as well as your catalog or session keywords and your keyword library here. If we want to add another one, we can do so. So if I simply create new, and let's call this David's image library list, create, then we end up with the possibility to then import keywords into that library from a keyword text file, from a Media Pro if you've used Media Pro in the past or present, or actually any other Capture One catalog or session. And the reason for that, let's just add some crappy keywords to this: cat, dog, mouse, for example. So here's an amazing keyword library set here like so. What it means is that when we come to export, we can actually decide which keywords we want to pull from. So let's say I just add cat to this image. When we come to export, if you look in the metadata tool tab, you'll see that there's a category here, which is what I turned off earlier, include keywords. Now by default, this will include every keyword in the image that you've tagged, of course, from every keyword library. But if we wanted to say only from this library, we could. So now if I was to export this image, even though it has all these keywords, let's do that. Even though it has all these keywords, it's only going to use keywords from David's image library list, which happens to be cat. So if I export this, let's do so, process that out, find that image, and that's probably going to be this one. Whoops. Just go to preview and close anything we've got. Let's open this one up, open with preview. And you see the only keyword it contains is cat, because I asked Capture One to only include from David's image library, even though it contained all those keywords. So that's a really handy thing. Now the reason why we have that, it's probably not going to be relevant to most of us, but if you are supplying to keyword libraries, some keyword libraries have very different criteria for tagging images to other keyword libraries. So some libraries might prefer you to give emotional keywording. So this image would be, powerful, morning, atmospheric, blah, blah, blah. Whereas another keyword library would simply like you to describe what is in the image. So it means you can keyword the image into very different styles and then decide when you export exactly what keyword style that should have with it. So that's the reason why you can have more than one keyword library. But for most of us, it's probably not going to be necessary as such. Okay, let's go to the next page of notes. So we've seen with our keyword library, and personally, as I said, this is where I would start. So don't just kind of get a batch of images up as such, select all, stare at them blankly, and then start trying to think of kind of clever keywords. You can see here, because I had that, not my amazing list there, the foundation list here, because I had a good list to start from, then it makes the whole keyword process much easier. So even here, if I type valley, for example, then I can add pretty simply a nice keyword like that to everything. Frank says, could be useful if you wanted to cloak personal identities too. Yeah, that's true. If you're exporting images and you really want to have control over what kind of metadata is going out, even to the point where we can control what kind of metadata gets added as part of that export too, then that could be interesting too. Okay, filtering. So we've been adding keywords merrily, but we have to remember what is the point of that, of course. And the point of that is really to be able to find and search for our images quickly. So let's just go to all images. Let's bring filters out for a second. If you don't see the keyword option here in the filters tool, then you might have to go here and say show hide filters, and then make sure keywords is ticked. So now in the keywords category, I've got selected all the images in this small catalog. We can see what has keywords and what has everything else. So if you remember, I added a few things with various different weather. So now I can see if I tap here, and I think, and this is the reason why adding the parent is useful, because if I tap, let's pop you over there, if I tap weather, for example, then I can see all my cloudy, rainy, sunny pictures. I could see all my natural phenomenons if I had other stuff like hurricanes and tornadoes and stuff, but I can see all weather. I can see just cloudy, just rainy, and just sunny, like so. So there is really no bad thing that it's adding the parent by default. I just think that gives you better options. Can you find images which have no keywords? Yes, that's pretty much everything I own. So you'll see the very top one is no keywords. So that's kind of a good way to know, oh my goodness, I've got 10,000 images that I need to keyword, for example. But yes, you can do that. To clear any search criteria, you hit that X at the top here, like so. So going back to our other keywords, of course, if I want to combine keywords, I could say, well, I want to see all my cloudy pictures and all my sunny pictures. So if I option click, then I can have 2 radio buttons. But nothing is showing up right now. Why? Because if we go here, results must match all criteria. So I should have, that's strange, hang on a second. I want to see everything cloudy and sunny. So it should match all criteria. If I change this to match any, then it shows up. So remember, you have this rule here. Do you want to match all the criteria? So the keyword should have cloud and sunny in it, or do you want it to match any of the criteria? So remember, if you're getting kind of unexpected results, that's going to have an influence on whether you're going to see all of it or not. By default, generally it tends to be switched on as such, but you can mix and match any of the filters by option clicking. So I want to see all my natural phenomenon images and something else like that was shot with a, if we go camera lens, everything that was shot with a Sony 28, for example, nothing, or anything that was shot with the Sony 55mm, those two. And you can see how quick it returns because we're really only searching a database as such. So the gateway to all of that, of course, is the filters tool. Let's just cancel that filter. Now, if you've ever filtered down anything and you want to save that as a collection, so as an album, for example, 3 little orange dots here in the search bar. If we tap that, then it shows us that the active filter is the keyword equals what natural phenomenons as such. So if I change this to, say, cloudy and sunny, and say match all, click on 3 dots, you can now see that the active filters, the keyword must equal natural phenomenon cloud and natural phenomenon sunny. So now I can say create a smart album, and I could call that cloudy and sunny images, for example. Whoops, save. And that will now pop up in my library. Under user collections, we've got a smart album down at the bottom here. So, and as it's a smart album, it means if I tag anything else with cloudy and sunny, it's going to pop up in there. So if I go back to this one and let's find something cloudy, let's add a keyword to this one and say cloud, like so. Then straight away, if we go back to my smart album, which is down here, you can see it's now popped up quite nicely. Probably a stupid question, says Tracy. No such thing as a stupid question, just stupid answers. Can you search for keywords outside of Capture One if you've added keywords? I would say no. I mean, you could find keywords and images that you've exported, depending where you're searching, of course. But generally, I would probably say no, I would think, Tracy. Sorry about that. But if you've got a whole bunch of JPEGs that you've exported and you've put them in something else like Google Photos, for example, then Google Photos will pick up the keywords, or Apple Photos, or whatever. But remember, it all depends in your process recipe, as you mentioned, that if you said to include keywords, for example. So most basic image management programs can recognize keywords. So Ryan says, I think you may have mentioned this, but is the keyword catalog available in each catalog and session? Yes, it is. So it's global. So the one that you see sitting here, this one, the one that we made today, foundation list, this you'll see regardless of whatever catalog or session you're open. The very first one simply shows you the keywords that are present in the current catalog or session. Okie dokie. Jim says that's one advantage for DNG files, the keywords are embedded. Not necessarily. If you've got DNG files in Capture One, we don't embed them into the DNG. It stays in the catalog database. Capture One has a no edit the raw file policy for security. So the keywords are stored in the catalog database. They're not written into the raw files themselves. Okay, so that pretty much covers all the sort of keyword stuff. The recap is really, or the take home is that start with the keyword library. Get a good keyword library in place. It's going to make your keywording tasks much, much easier. Don't start like I used to, stare blindly at this empty flashing cursor, desperately trying to think of clever keywords to use and spelling them wrong and adding some with capitals and so on and so forth. Dave says, can you get keywords from Lightroom to show in Capture One? Well, if you import your Lightroom library, which is here, then it can bring it across. But I think if there's any Lightroom users out there who know, I think you can export a keyword list from Capture One. Sorry, you can export the keyword list from Lightroom as a text file and then import that into Capture One, I think. So just you can. Dillian says you can do. Thanks, Dylan. Not Dillian. Dylan says you can do. So in Lightroom, export out your keyword list as a text file and then import that into Capture One. Tracy says, is there a standard of keeping keywords lowercase versus with uppercase? God, there's probably about 10 different standards. Personally, it's a lot easier if you just keep them lowercase, I would think. There's no grammar police for keywording, so it's probably easier, more straightforward if you keep them lowercase. Can you export a keyword list from Aperture? Good question. Export keyword list Aperture. I think the answer is yes. You can pretty much do so. Yes, you can. And here is a help link for you to know how to do that. So yes, it is possible. Ted says, do the catalog keywords list include specifically only keywords applied to photos in that catalog? Yes. So the catalog keyword list here only holds keywords that are specifically in the images in this catalog. Correct. Okay. I gave you the link for that keyword list too, yes. And if anyone else finds any other amazing keyword lists, please let me know. But I think that one as a free one was pretty amazing considering the number of keywords in there and how nicely it was arranged. We had the same question this morning now from George. Can I add GPS data to tag the images? There is a category in the metadata tool. So let's just add metadata back. There is a category in the metadata tool. Let's make this, close this down for a second. GPS coordinates here, but you can't edit it in Capture One. There are some utilities out there which will allow you to hack the raw file and add it, but Capture One isn't one of those as such. And finally, can you merge keyword lists? No, not in Capture One, but I'm sure there's probably some free utilities out there which would probably let you do that. Remember, it's only a text file, so I'm sure some clever people out there have done some little utilities that would allow you to do that. Okay, so editing or adding metadata. Let's just go back to a bigger collection of images and talk about metadata as such. Now, metadata adding it in Capture One is a little bit different to adding keywords. So for example, if we have one image selected here and I just want to add my name, I can easily go to the IPTC category of my choice and add my name like so, and it will then sit in the IPT data like so. However, if I select, say, the top row of images here and try and do the same thing, David Grover, can't write my own name, enter, then it actually only applies to the first image. Because the way the metadata tool behaves is like pretty much any other tool in Capture One. The keyword tool is in some way unique that it applies to every single image when you have a selection like so. So the best thing to do for IPTC data, at least for the basic stuff, is to make yourself a preset. So if I fill in some stuff here, so let's select one image and say David Grover, job title, photographer. Recommend you all do something like this. City, let's say Copenhagen. Country, DK. Website, www.capture1.com, for example. And all important down the bottom, let's put our copyright notice in. Option G, David Grover 2017, like so. So that's some basic metadata, which I might like to add to all my images. And the easiest way to do that is via a preset. So we just have to save this as a preset. So if we go up in the top right and say save user preset, and this is a really, really vital step. So don't just go ahead and stab save without looking at anything else. Some aspects of the metadata we don't want to have in a preset. For example, rating and color tag. Because otherwise when you apply a preset, it would have added 5 stars and a color tag to every single image. So we really want to have a good look down this list and make sure we uncheck anything that doesn't make sense. So now I only want the creator, job title, city, country, website, and copyright. Now I can say save, say David Metadata 2017. Save. So now if I select a bunch of images and then I pick the preset, David Metadata, like so, then you see it autofills like so. So now it's applied to all those images. So to do a bulk metadata application like that, it's easy. So select all, go here, David Metadata, that's now applied to everything. Nice and speedy. Simple, simple. I was saying that, hang on a minute, I'll probably select all, add metadata, like so. There we go, that's better. What I should also mention is that you can copy apply metadata from one image to another. So let's say we want to add something else. Let's add an email here, webinar@phase1.com. And I want to get this across to the top row, for example. Then I can use the copy and apply button here. So tap that, but then I'm going to take everything off except for email address, which is emails like so. Say apply. So then now that will put the email address across to that top row which I selected as such. So just be a little bit careful when you're copying and applying metadata across like that. But by far the easiest thing to do is to create your own preset and add that across. Jim says the double arrow at the top of the panel doesn't copy to multiple images like it does for other tools in Capture One. It should do, Jim, like we just did there, for example. Let's kind of go down to another one and let's do email here, for example, webinar@phase1.com. Select all of these, click copy, turn everything off, make sure we pick emails, say apply, like so. And now if I grab this image, you see it's got webinar@phase1.com. So yes, it certainly should. Richard says, I found you can use your preset on import. Yes, and that's really the next smart thing that you can do, is that when you come to import images into Capture One, have a look in the second to last window under adjustments. So it's slightly hidden if you like, and you'll find here under user presets that you can add your metadata like so, and that will add the metadata to the image on import to. So if you want to add your all crucial important metadata as you import, then you can do that as well. For those of you on Lightroom, actually let's find out who's on Lightroom. I'm just going to throw up a poll on screen that says, what is your current raw converter? You can tick Capture One and Lightroom if you wish, that's fine. But for those of you on Lightroom, you might be used to adding keywords on import, and you can do that with a preset like we just did with metadata, but you can't select from your keyword library on import and have those applied. But you can save a preset of keywords. So if you go out shooting landscapes, you always use the same keywords, you could save a keyword preset list and have those applied on import if you wish, or you just do it once the import has finished. Thanks for answering that. Those of you on Capture One, thanks, and those of you on Lightroom, I hope you've shown that keywording is pretty good in Capture One as well. Alrighty, and if you want to know how to make a keyword preset, it's exactly the same. So we would just say save user preset like so, and it would save all the current keywords in a preset. Philip says you can use EXIF tool. Yes, yeah, that's a good one for adding GPS data, or GeoSetter on Windows at least. I'm shooting with a couple of vintage lenses and says there's no lens info to be found in the metadata. No, correct. Would you have any suggestion how I could recognize which images are taken with which lens? I would think the only thing you could do is actually use a keyword for that. So you could make keywords for your vintage lenses. The only thing is when you imported, you'd have to remember which image was shot with which lens. And then the only way to do that probably is with good old pen and paper at time of shooting. Just depends if you can be that dedicated. Or at the start, if you've put a lens on the camera, shoot a piece of paper with the name of the lens, and then when you change lens, shoot another piece of paper with a different name of the lens. Then you could easily batch apply a keyword to those lenses. That's probably the most old school method you could do with it as well, I would think. The last thing to mention is that if you're using a different application for adding metadata, whether that's adding keywords, metadata, or whatever, so it could be Photo Mechanic, for example, where you're adding keywords, metadata templates, star ratings, and color tags, and you want to get that into Capture One, then it's perfectly possible as long as you're happy with using XMP sidecar files. So if in your other application it can generate an XMP sidecar file like Photo Mechanic can, of course, then in Capture One, if you go to Preferences and find Image, then you'll see an option down here, Auto Sync Sidecar. You can set this to load. And that means Capture One will read images when you import them, and it will read the XMP sidecar data to add any metadata into Capture One's database as well. If you want to write XMP data back to the sidecar file, then you have to say full sync. But most people are comfortable with just using load, so it means we can read XMP sidecar data coming from another application as such. And yes, full sync if you want to go back and forth, load if you simply want to read. Philip suggests you could add lens information using EXIF tool to modify the raw file as well. So that's another option as well. So Philip's got the technical option of using EXIF tool. I've got the hillbilly option, if you like, of shooting a piece of paper with the name on the lens on it and then adding a keyword. So both will work, I think, to some extent, but there is no probably true automatic way to do it, unfortunately, and there's always going to be a bit of workaround to do, sadly. Okay, I hope you found that useful with an introduction to sort of keywording. It's a subject which I'm not great at myself in actually doing, but I've found that I've been much better at it since I've been working from a good standard keyword list rather than trying to make it up as I go along, and that way your keywording is way more consistent. So my advice is start with that, and it can only get better from there on, of course. Now the next webinar, very different from today's one. So any of you wedding photographers out there, I've got a guest on which is actually my colleague Alex, who shoots a lot of weddings as well as working for us, and he has a brilliant workflow in Capture One. So a really good A to B workflow about setting up the file management in Capture One, choosing the best shots, doing some processing and exporting. He's also got a custom workspace for wedding work as well. So that's not until September the 7th. Even I need a holiday occasionally. So I'm off for a couple of weeks, and then the first webinar back will be September the 7th. In the follow-up email, which you'll get sometime tomorrow, you can sign up for that one, of course, and be ready and waiting back on September 7th. So thanks for your time today. Remember, it's being recorded too, so you can always pick that up tomorrow sometime and watch that again. So many thanks for your time, and see you all again soon. Take care.